Hey, welcome to another episode of Wisdom on the Front Porch. And on my front porch today, Shauna is here. Shauna, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get to be here.
Yeah. So Shauna and I have had a pre-talk. So we're maybe going to do things a little bit different than what we talked about before, but not too much because I want to get into the entrepreneurial part of it too. Um, but Shauna, you work with parents and with teens when there's a teen pregnancy there, helping them to open up communication and things like that. But why would you choose to do that out of all the things in the world you could do?
Yes, definitely. And first of all, it's not necessarily just with teen pregnancy. The
Okay.
teen pregnancy part is because that's where I was. I was a teen pregnancy. So when I had my baby and I'm holding my baby and looking at my mom and saying, you know what, mom, I really want to talk to teenagers because this is not what they think it is.
Mm,
And that was the very start of why I started talking with teens. And the message, yes, with to teenagers was, and I should say is, you know what? Yeah, have all the sex you want, but when you're married. So that's my class for them. I'm just changing it because, like, saying, abstinence, they're like, yeah, okay, that's dumb. I don't even want to hear that. But when I'm talking differently to them and saying, yeah, hey, yeah, do go ahead, have all the sex you want. Woohoo, baby. But but when you're married. So then that's a little bit different. So that's what I want to be is just to be a little bit different for them. And but that's the reason why I got started with that. And then the other part was because when I would speak in the schools and talk, I had training. I worked with Crisis Pregnancy Center and
okay.
worked with them for 10 years and then spoke in the schools for 8 years. So that's where I got all this training from, which was kind of cool,
Yeah.
and it was actually almost 10 years to the day. So it was just kind of cool how it all worked out and just kind of fell into place. And then all the teenagers that I spoke to, and I mean, hundreds of teenagers, I always got letters. I always got teens saying to me, that you need to talk to my parents. You need to talk to my mom. My mom and dad, they really need to hear this. You need to talk to them. So I thought that was kind of, I just thought everybody got a message like that and teens talk to them. So that's why I then created a workshop for parents because of what the teens were saying. So that's how I got started.
Nice. So you talk about more things than just teen pregnancy. What are some of the other things that you cover?
It's definitely abstinence, but again, in a whole different angle,
Right.
like, don't even, you're better off just not even going there. And also, I talk to them about relationships for teenagers, building a
Okay.
relationship with the person and really knowing who you are and, like what happens when you do intersex into a relationship and how that does to your heart and what you take to the marriage.
Yeah.
So it is all of that stuff within that class that I present and teach and give to the teenagers. And with the parents, it's talking to them about building and connecting a relationship with their teen because they cannot have you cannot have a serious talk with your teenager if you do not have a relationship with your teenager. They are going to
Right.
blow you off. They don't care. You don't give a rip about me. Why am I going to care about what you have to say? So that's what I focus on first is the relationship between the parent and the teenager and then talk to them about how they can talk to their teen about sex because it's a hard conversation and not for every parent because some parents do have that conversation
Right.
and some they don't know how to, so I give them the how to.
Yeah. Or they barely touch upon it because the teens are all, oh, I don't want to talk about this with you. And it's like, yeah, well, do you talk about it with your friends? It's like,
Yeah.
come
Right.
on,
Right. Because
you
they're
know?
hearing about it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. They're hearing it and seeing it, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I have a question for you. And we did talk about this a little bit earlier, but I really want to talk about it a bit more, is the attitude and the mindset of a teen getting pregnant, having sex before marriage, and then they get married and they have sex. And what's your opinion on how sex before marriage affects marriage itself once they decide to get married?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Well, really, it gives them a misconcept, first of all,
Okay.
they don't. And when they wait, if they wait, and even if, okay, if the teen does have sex and then they don't, they still can get this feeling that I'm going to say is where they don't know how good it can be in marriage because it's so tainted and they don't understand that and they get this concept of it's not a big deal, okay, whatever, I'm just supposed to do that and why do I need to care, to for some, for some of them it just really just lowers their self-esteem and then they just have sex with just whoever wants to. And that's especially for the girl, because for the girl it really lowers her self-esteem and it really can. And or not and well, I will say it can do that. And for most girls, it will do that. And then it can become to where she just has sex all the time, to where she doesn't care anymore. So it kind of will do two things to her. For the guy, he doesn't necessarily have that same thing that the girl has, to where his self-esteem isn't lowered. It doesn't mean he can't have a broken heart, but because they're created differently, they're designed differently. So they don't have that same, thought processing. And two, because he doesn't go through a pregnancy of 9 months, of showing and having, your stomach sticking out and you gain, 300 pounds, so, it's like, oh, you're still skinny. Oh, great. So
Yeah.
their concept, though, once they do get married, it can be just different. But once they do get married, it actually so many times and they feel so much better.
Okay.
And it's they feel better because if they're marrying the right person. Because just because you get pregnant by someone or you get her pregnant, it doesn't mean that that's the right person for you to be marrying. You have a
Right.
child now, or whether they put it for adoption, but if you keep that child, you have this, hey, for the rest of your life between you two.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Um, I'm just thinking of, my sister was a in high school, um, and just I have a family member who worked in a clinic to help teens with their pregnancies, to try to, um, all the things that go on with that. And there's just such a, um, I don't know if it's something in their mind, but things change once you've had a baby,
Yeah,
and how you look at life and how you were treated, and what people thought of you. And for some, they'll never, it's like, forget this. I don't want to ever go through that again. For others, it's just like, well, okay, I've done it once. Well, I just have to keep doing it because I'm tainted, we'll put it that word, because I'm already marked, so it doesn't matter. Which I think myself is a fallacy. It does matter. So you made a mistake. Doesn't mean you keep on making a mistake.
yeah,
It doesn't mean you keep on doing whatever. And then there's always the ones who say, well, you've already done it, so what's the big deal? Let's just do it again. And it's like, no. And I think a lot of, tell me if this is true or not, if you think this, I think a lot of teens, um, boy, that thought just left my mind so fast. There's just a lot of pressure there. Um,
yeah,
and
right.
and when they're curious, they want to know what everything's all about and what the big deal is, and but they don't realize how it changes them. I
Right.
guess maybe that's a good word.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's very, very true. Because
Yeah.
what they see in the movies, what they see in and hear in music, that they're more so taught and talked to about having sex. It's not a big deal. And it's okay if you have, all these different partners because that's what people do. And turn, instead of showing them like, wow, okay, once you do that, yeah, sometimes it takes you down a path that you never thought you would ever go down. And there's a lot of, especially there's a lot of teenagers that do want to wait until, they're married. And
Yeah.
hey, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
Um, but I think too, more parents need to continue to talk that way with them. And even if they have had sex, to say, honey, you don't have to keep doing that. Because we're
Yeah.
all taught that. Hey, I was taught the same thing. It's like, well, once you've done that, like, hey, you're basically, that's just what's going to happen. You're going to be doing that all the time now. When it's like, gosh, I really wanted to wait till I was
Right.
married. I did not want to, I did, of course, I didn't want to have a baby in high school. But
Right.
I definitely did not want to have, um, I wanted to wait. I wanted to, marry the person and do all this stuff. And I did marry him. We had two children, but I was married and divorced by the time I was 20 with two
Oh,
children. So it's like,
wow.
well, because should I have actually married him?
Right.
And then we tend to, as females, marry the person because, especially if that's the one, our first one, and we
Mhm.
lost our virginity to them, we tend to have an extra bond to that person. And
Yes.
then it's so
Yes.
hard for you to think, well, oh my gosh, I can't imagine not marrying the father to my baby. Like it's hard to comprehend that in your brain.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
I wouldn't have had sex with him if I wasn't attracted to him and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
you know. And
So
it's
why
like,
not marry him?
yeah.
And then it didn't stay because the maturity, just what you were saying,
Right.
the female, the girl, she starts to mature because her body's changing, her hormones are changing, her emotions are like like a roller
Right.
coaster on top of the hormones, and the guy stays right here. So she's like,
Yeah.
up here, and then she continues to grow and stay here after the baby, and he's still right here.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of times the relationship does not work out and there's a lot
Yeah.
of fighting.
She's got the responsibility now. She knows
Yes.
that this
Yes.
is her responsible
Hmm.
responsibility. Um, yeah, and we'd mentioned earlier when you and I were talking about how you not only have your teenage hormones going on, now you have these pregnancy hormones going on top of that. Talk about a double whammy.
Right, exactly. That you don't understand either one of them.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't mean they're not there and it's
Yeah,
real.
right. Yeah, and going back to, waiting until you do get married. Um, it's, nobody stops to think about now you two are experiencing something together that neither of you have experienced before. And there's this whole different connection between you, that you're doing stuff for the first time and whatnot. And just from some in my family that I've talked with, it's like, yeah, once you get married, it's like there's no pizzazz or something. You
Mm.
really have to work at starting from the beginning because you're not,
Yeah, right.
it's tough. It makes it tougher. Yeah, there's all those emotions going on too. And maybe that's why, in my opinion, why it's tougher for girls, females, teenage girls, um, women, however you want to say who they are, is because they have an emotional attachment to it. And I truly believe that sex is an emotional bond
Right.
and um, a deeper bond between two humans. And so you do it and you break that bond. You keep breaking that bond, like you said, how scar builds up and there's just, yeah.
Yeah, right.
But it doesn't mean that if you've been doing that, you still can't stop. You can.
Yeah, right. So you don't have to believe the lie that, wow, once you did that and done that
And-
and have gone there, you don't, you got to keep doing that. And you're right when you're saying it's a bond and emotional because it's meant to do that.
Right.
Sex is meant to bond us together, whether we're married or not. And that's why you have then, if you're having partner after partner, you're still bonding to that person, even though you might not think anything, like it's no big deal, whatever, that's just what I
Right.
do. And you become numb to that. It doesn't mean that you did not give a piece of yourself emotionally to that person. And that's why when they get married and they've had all that, that's why a lot of times marriages do not stay together because they have all this baggage that what they've done as a teenager that they
Hmm.
didn't realize wow, I need to heal my heart. Wow, I actually need to do some mending here before I really get married. And they just jump into a marriage and then they don't even stay married because they're so unhealed and there's
Right.
so much damage done that, and they don't understand it. It's because what they did as a teenager and then as a young adult, and then you just jump into a relationship because you've done that all your life and they don't know how to stay married.
Yeah, that's a good point. And getting back to the parents in with this, teens say, "Oh, I wish my parents knew this." Talk a little bit about that communication that just doesn't connect. How do they get that connection?
Yeah. Uh, And one of the reasons why I focus on that too is because, for one, that's the number one thing that parents tell me is I wish I could connect to my teenager. So then that's again one of in the workshop. That's actually the first thing that we work on. That's the first thing we talk about is the connection because that's parents the desire of their heart is to connect with their teen.
Right.
But again, you cannot have a conversation with your teenager unless you have a connection with your teenager. And that's the same thing as if I'm talking to them, there is a connection. And it's not just because, like, the first time I see them, they're just going to pour their heart out to me. It's because I'm focused on them. I'm talking to
Right.
them as a person, who they are. It's not about me. Who cares about me? They don't care about me. They just care about the fact that, wow, this person's talking to me. Wow, she's really giving me the time of day. And that's kind of the same thing as the parents. It needs to be more of a conversation of like, hey, what did you do today? How was your day? Not, and I know those are like closed questions, like fine, good, nothing, where it's like, right. Sometimes talking to your teen is like pulling teeth from a newborn baby. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I know they're in there. I know they're in there and it's hard, but you have to, as the parent, stay focused and remember that it is your job as the parent to connect with your teen, not the job of your teenager to connect with you.
Right.
So you might have to put extra work in, but how committed are you into having a relationship with your teenager? Because if there hasn't been one, your teen's 18 now, and this whole time you have not had a relationship with your teen, you're going to have to work extra hard. And
Right.
doing that,
Right.
then you put your phone down and you go for a walk. You say, let's go for some ice cream. Hey, you know what? I know I haven't really connected with you like I should have. And hey, you're about to graduate high school. So if they're in high school, or maybe they have graduated, maybe they're going to be going off to college. And I just need to tell you that I'm sorry. And I really want us to have a better relationship. And I'm sorry that I did not do my part in connecting and making that relationship with you. So, hey, do you
Oh,
want to go for some ice cream? So then the parents start doing that. And then they maybe set up a time. How about, every day at, I don't know, 7 o'clock that we, just kind of hang out together. We put our phone down and we just, watch, even if you just watch a movie, even if you just sit there and talk, whatever it is that we start doing. You can even get like where they write maybe 5 things and you put it in a little jar. You write 5 things, okay, kind of make it fun. All right, and let's see what we want to do today. So
okay.
there's maybe something in there that you are doing that's going to connect. And they might be like, well, that's dumb. Why would I want to write something down? Well, well, let's just make it fun. All right. So for the parent, they have to stay with it because your teen might be like, well, why would I want to do that? That's stupid. Well, okay, it might be stupid, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Don't throw in the
Why did
towel
you wait
so
until now
fast.
to do it? You wasted all this time. When I
Yes.
wanted to talk to you, you wouldn't be there. And so I don't want to talk to you now.
Yeah,
But don't let that stop you. Say,
exactly.
you're right. I
Hmm.
blew it. It was horrible, but
Hmm.
we've got our whole lives ahead of us. And we don't know what's going to happen the next day or the day after that. So let's see
Yes.
what we can do to make
Yeah,
this right. And
exactly.
and
Right.
I
We're going to
need to
start
take
over.
responsibility for my part. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because just saying that actually tears walls down. But then you have to follow through,
Yes.
And if your teen's going to test you because they more than likely will, well, okay, well, they said they're going to do this. Well, they're not going to remind you, that you said Tuesday at 7 o'clock, we're going to put our phones
Oh,
down.
yeah.
They're not
No.
going to remind you. Oh, it doesn't mean they forgot, but they're not going to remind you and be like, oh, well, remember you said, maybe 3 weeks later, remember when you said we were going to hang out? Oh, Oh, they remember, all right, but they're going to see if you remember and if
Yeah,
you are going to do what you said you're going to do because it becomes then the a character issue then on mom and dad. Where's your integrity? Because
there you
hey,
go.
your teen's watching and they want to see, well, why are you telling me to have someone? Where's yours? Because they're really good at calling you out on it too.
Oh, yes. Yes. I think too for parents, and you can correct me if this maybe is too far off or something, is we're with the kids, we're raising them, we're teaching them how to walk, how to talk, how to eat, things to do, don't do this, yes, do that. You don't want to play with those kids, you want to play with these kids, whatever, we're there all the time. And now they become teenagers and they still want us there, but they don't want us there. There's that back and forth all the time. But now they're creating a mind of their own, trying to find out what they do like, what they don't like. And even though we've done these things all this time, now all of a sudden, I don't like to do that anymore. And it's like that was fine. And I think sometimes as parents, we just say, okay, they don't want anything to do with me now that they're a teenager, and you just back off and let them figure out who they are. But I think some of us back off way too much. Um, so is there validity in that?
Oh, for sure, definitely. And parents definitely, it's okay to give them some space, let
Hmm.
them hang out maybe in their room for a little bit, but not all the time. One thing like I did with my girls, teenagers, like I never had them go to their room and do homework. I never did
Yeah.
because once they start getting into the bedroom, like, hey, I remember as a teenager, man, I spent hours in my bedroom, but my home life wasn't necessarily this great place to be. So then I backed off, and that's where I wanted to do is, be in my room, listen to music, not talk to anybody. And even though I had a big family, just some of the dynamics within my family wasn't the way I then in turn raised my girls. But yes, they need some space. Yes, they need some time, but you do need to make your teenager do stuff that they don't want to do,
Yeah.
because otherwise they're going to be laying on your couch and or in your basement for the rest of their life and your life, whichever one comes
Yeah.
first. And then you're going to be like, wow, I wish I would have. But too many parents have the mindset of like, well, I want to make them happy whatever they want to do to make them happy. You can't have that mindset of them because they don't want to do anything then. And not every single teenager, but a lot of them will have that, especially if you're going to take care of everything for them.
Yeah. I
Sometimes,
don't
yes,
want
you
them
do
to
have
leave
to make
because
them.
then I can still care for them. I don't
Right, right,
have an empty nest. I don't have to be alone. And
right.
and I've always taken care of them, so I need to take care of them, but it's not
Yeah.
doing either of you any good.
Right.
You
That's
know?
unhealthy. And it's
Yeah.
unhealthy as the parent to have that mindset. And then you put that unhealthy on your teenager to never want to pursue a life that they are, that they should be pursuing, a life that is waiting for them, you know? And yes, we're always that, like we do have to go through that change of where they are and who they are as they're growing up and maturing and developing. But that still doesn't mean that the parent does not have the right to speak into the life of their teenager. But now you're just changing the conversation a little bit more to where you're making the instead of like, why are you hanging out with them? Don't you know they do drugs? That's so stupid. I can't believe you're doing that. Why are you so dumb? Instead of talking like that, then you say, so what is it about that friend that you want to hang out with? What is it that you like about them? Do you
Mhm.
see what your friendship is? Where you turn the conversation so they'll want to talk with you, not just to where
Right.
they feel accused and constantly just talked at, but talked with, because
Right.
that's what you want to do, because you want to be raising and leading your children, your teenager, to be an adult, because they're going to be an adult regardless of where they're at. But now, what are they going to do with those adult years? And how are they going to process and live the life of that? Because that's our job, is to have them be productive citizens. And that's what you want to do. And that's kind of how you start changing the conversation, and because you're changing the relationship. But it doesn't mean because that you don't have the right. Because when I said that so many times, parents think, well, now that they're a teenager, they don't need me. They can do whatever they want. But no, they should not. Yeah,
They
give them
need
some,
more.
yeah, they still need some boundaries. They still need some
Yeah.
standards. They still need some guidelines, and that's still from the parent. They still need even to have, um, if they do stuff, they still need to have, now I can't think of the word I want to say. If they've done things wrong, they still need to have, something that's giving them the, now my word. Um,
I want to say safety net, but I don't think that's quite right what you're
right,
after.
not
They
safety
need a
net.
safe place.
Yes, and in order for them to talk to you, they need to have a safe place.
Yes.
But they need to, okay, here we go. They need to have consequences to
Oh,
their actions.
be held
That's
accountable like we would.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So when they are doing things that they should not be, because that's real life, you have consequences to actions. So if I'm going to drink and drive and I end up running someone off the road because I'm drunk, and then my teen does that and never has a consequence as they get into adulthood, oh, well, they don't think that there should ever be a consequence to that
Right.
because I didn't allow them to suffer consequences. And that's when you want them to, is when they're in your home and see in your safe net. But you
Yeah.
still got to let them, have the consequences, and you got to let it happen, not cover it up and protect them from it.
Right. Or they'll never stop. They'll
Oh,
just,
exactly. Because they don't have to. There's no
yeah.
reason to.
Mm. It's tough. It's tough being a parent.
Yeah.
It's tough being a kid. So,
Right. Right.
yeah. So, as an entrepreneur yourself, how do you manage the family, the kids growing up, your work, and just life altogether? What are some things you do to make it all harmonize together?
Yeah. Well, it can be hard, definitely, especially now that I have six grandchildren, you
Oh,
know?
wonderful.
So I know, which is super fantastic. Going to celebrate one's birthday, later on tonight. So that's exciting. And
Happy birthday.
I know, like happy birthday to her. So that's exciting. One thing that I had that is like a no compromise, something that I do not compromise is just that. Is I'm like, okay, I will never compromise my family, and especially like my grandchildren, because they don't know. They don't know what their Mimi does yet, especially because the younger ones, they're not teenagers. They see some of the stuff that I'm doing, but they don't understand it,
Right,
which is
right.
fine. But they do know that I get to spend time with them, and I will spend time with them. And when I am, I'm very present. So that's the number one thing, is I don't compromise my family. And that's actually one of my biggest prayers, because I worked with teens and was a youth leader for over 20 years. And that was always my prayer. I was like, okay, God, that I never put my family below, or I should say that I never put, like the youth group above my family, because it would be easy to, because I love teenagers and I love being with them and I love doing what I do so much that it truly is a calling, and it's such a love within me.
Mhm.
But I have to make sure that my family is not going to be compromised.
Right. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to do that. That's great. Um, so do you schedule time with family? How do you get
Mm,
them? Get time with them. How
yeah.
do you get them? How do you get
Yeah.
time with them?
Well, they usually come here every Tuesday for sure.
Oh,
And
nice.
then,
Okay.
yes, which is very great. And then in the summer, we have a pool
Oh,
outside.
nice.
So then we do get to spend a lot of time with them in the summertime. So a lot of that is just already time already in. So then I tend to do a lot of my work at night.
Oh, all right.
So, but then
Yeah.
as I'm going to be my in person with the workshop that I have for parents, and then that workshop with the parents, then there's a teen class with that. That is getting more, I should say, that's being promoted more right now. So, because of, still with COVID from myself anyway, I had to
Right.
cancel all those things. And so
Oh,
that's
sure.
just rejuvenating. And then I've revamped some stuff, and then, you know, just doing things a little bit differently. So now, once that gets more active, it's going to be nice because as my little grands get older, they'll get to travel with me because they're
Oh,
all
sweet.
homeschooled.
Nice.
And so they'll all get to be, like part of that team with me at some point, which
Yeah.
is kind of cool. And then as I do this, I have a girls' day event that I put on, and they cannot wait. The girls in there, they can't wait to be part of that. So that's, teenagers, high school girls that get to connect and be part of that girls' day. So
Oh,
they're
that's
they're like
wonderful.
looking forward to those things. So that's exciting, but they'll
Yeah.
get to be part of those things as they grow older. So then right now, the time that I do have with them, it's uh it's pretty much whenever they want, but then, because like I said, then I'll do a lot of my work that if it's online, then I do it at nighttime.
Yeah. That's a good way to do it. Um, yeah. So you have a podcast coming out soon. Tell us about
Hmm.
that. And why did you decide to do a podcast?
Oh, okay. Well, doing the podcast first, I wasn't, I wanted to, and then I wasn't sure. And then I was like, okay, should I just do videos online? I think the podcast, and I did ask some teenagers, like if I should do one, and they were excited about it. They're like, yeah,
Oh, no.
okay, that's exciting. So that's what the podcast is, Talking to Teens show.
Okay.
Is, what it will be. I'm doing editing right now. So I have 5 shows that are recorded right now.
Awesome.
So then gonna put that out. So I think I'm more excited than the teenager, So I'm like, oh my gosh, woohoo. So really it's just like my way of getting to talk with them and telling them some things and talking with them through some things. And the reason why I'm doing the podcast is because because it's maybe going to be something a little bit different than just a YouTube channel,
Mhm.
which that's kind of what I liked about that too, and getting them plugged in. So then eventually I will start doing some of those shows live. So then the team can connect and ask their questions, and we just get it rolling out. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm
Nice.
excited about it.
Yeah. And you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And
What's the
that
name of
YouTube,
it?
it's uh Shauna. It's at Shawna Partlow, Teen Relationship Coach. And that's also the same as my Facebook page. So the
Okay.
YouTube channel is for parents, is what that one is. And I just have just some videos up there that as parents talk to me, then that's the kind of video then that I'm putting out there is what I
Okay.
hear them saying. Then I'm just putting them out there and letting them see it and watch it and to help the parents because before when I was just like helping teenagers and talking to the teenagers until the teenagers started saying, hey, I wish you talked to my parents, I knew I needed to talk to both of them. So when I created that parent workshop and now, joining them together, it has to be both of them together. Because if I just help one, then I'm not helping both of them. So if I just help the parent, the teenager like has no clue either. But
Right.
if I'm focused on the teenager, because that's really where my heart is the teen. But then I'm like, if I don't help the parents come along, then I'm not even helping the teenager. I'm actually hurting them more because their parent has no clue either. So it's
Right.
kind of getting them
Right.
both on the same page and then connecting them together to build the relationship so the parent can talk to them about tough issues, especially, when it comes to sex.
Right. Right. Oh, that's really great. And you have a website too, correct?
Yes, and that is
Yeah.
shaunapartlow.com. So that's easy.
That was, yeah.
Yes, right.
Um,
That's an easy one.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited about your podcasts and stuff that you
Oh,
have
I know.
coming up. Um, Yeah, this is really interesting. Seeing how you were already doing this and now you're turning it into your entrepreneurship because this is wisdom on the front porch for entrepreneurs, so we need to know about that too. But a lot of us work at home with our teens, with our kids, and we need to know how to balance that, harmonize it, bring it together, not make them feel left out. And teens are going through so much, just, they don't even know where their mind is or their emotions are one day to the next. So it's great to have someone like you, of course, who will help through that? How do I navigate with this? I know one mom I recently spoke with, and she says the way my daughters dress is really risque. Our words, you can tell we're old because I say risque. But it's kind of like, well, this is the style today, and it's like, yeah, but you're half naked. That's not the image you want to be putting out there. How do you handle a situation like that where the kids are just totally defiant and the parents are, I'm not going to let you get away with it, but then they sneak things out when they go out or they look one way. And when they're at school, all of a sudden they change all the clothes and everything's different. So how do you navigate those kind of waters like that? Those are rough waters.
Yeah, it really is rough waters. It truly, truly is because she doesn't understand as a teenager what it's doing, to the
Yeah,
guy who's looking at her and what he sees and what she's doing to even, really disrespecting herself.
right.
So, one thing for the parent, when we just talked about consequences, what's going to be her consequence? You know,
Mhm.
you're going to dress like that. And if you do, then this is what's going to happen. Well, what's going to happen? And also, who's buying her the clothes?
Yeah,
Because that's the thing too. Is she buying them herself or is mom and dad taking her to the store and she likes it, so then you're buying it because you don't have to buy that for her. Um,
okay.
so that's something there too, unless she has her own money. But then, and another thing too is the way we talk to our teen, that is so key. And it
Yeah,
doesn't mean that sometimes you do have to get mad at them, but if you're mad all the time, then they learn to just block you out, oh mom, they're just always mad. So it doesn't matter what I do because they're just always mad.
right.
Well, you have to change that. Like parents, you have to change that within how you respond, how you re-talk to your teenager, because that is huge. And when you do change it, they're like, wow, okay, what's going on here? Because normally they would be mad about that. Sometimes your teen is testing you. They do lots of testing because they want to see, well, let's see how they're going to react. Well, let's see what they're going
Yeah,
to do. Let's see if they're going to really be mad at me this time, or they're dressing in that way because they know you're going to be mad at them. And they almost want you to be mad at them because so many times then the parent does this. They get mad, angry, and says, fine, just leave. Fine, then just wear that. Just get out of here. And that's the tactic of the teenager. They
yeah.
do that because they want that. Woohoo! Okay, I got what I wanted. And they're out the door doing whatever they want.
Even if
But
it's not what they wanted, they won. That's all it is they,
exactly. And that's what matters because some of them, that's all that matters is chalk one up for me. Woo! And they're happy about that. But when the parent starts changing their tactic and how they talk and how they respond, that changes then the teenager as well. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. But what are you going to do about it? If you're the one buying those clothes, you need to, wow, I need to stop buying that for her. If she's buying it herself, then you still need to sit down and have a talk with her, honey. Okay, this is really what it does. And sometimes the dad, he's the one that needs to step in and say, you know what, when you dress this way, this is what the guy is thinking. And and then ask her, why is it that you want to dress like that? What
Yeah,
is it that
it
you
could be attention. It could be I want
exactly?
to
That's
be the pretty
exactly
one. I
right.
want to be the one that
Yes.
says this.
Right. Because
The
what's the
other thing,
relationship between her and her dad? Because
yeah,
sometimes, who is she wanting attention from? A guy. And why? What's the relationship between her dad and her?
hmm,
So that's sometimes that is usually, that's a huge thing right there. Maybe the dad's not even in the picture. So
yeah,
the mom has to be doing all the conversation, but she needs to really sit down and talk with her, not just at her, and then talk to her and say, honey, I know you want to dress that way, but why? Why is it that you want to dress like that? What is it that why do you want to show your stomach like that? Why do you want to have all that cleavage showing?
yeah,
What is it that you want the guy to be looking at?
yeah. Or
So,
what do you want your clothes half hanging off of you?
yes, right.
It's
And if
like,
she, if the mom, the parent write down maybe a list of questions that they would want to ask her, that's good too. It doesn't mean you have to pull out that list when you're talking to her, Okay, I said that. All right, I said that. But then it helps with even their own brain. Like when you
yeah,
write it down, it helps to
processing
connect
it.
here. So when you do have the conversation with her, then you're going to know. But asking her the question, not condemning and saying, "Oh, look at you, you look like a tramp. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you," that's not making her want to not dress that way.
Yeah, that's kind of pushing her towards that.
Oh,
It's like
for
you
sure.
think that anyway, so what difference does it
Yes.
make? And
Yes.
that's a point I wanted to ask about is the mom saying, "Well, don't you know that guys are going to think this about you? Don't you know this is going to happen?" And the girl's like, "Why don't you trust me? Why don't you
Mhm.
trust that I can say no, that I can take care of myself?" Because maybe the mom has insecurities because she
Mhm.
made mistakes when she was young, and she doesn't want her kids to do that. Because kids don't, they're this age, they don't have the life experiences that we do as adults. And
Mhm.
so this is what they understand, and they can't see the future. It's just not possible for
Yeah,
some of them.
right.
Some of them don't. They don't understand it. They don't, see the dynamics until, 20 years later. And then it's like, oh, this is what she was talking about.
Right.
But at that point, when they say, "Why don't you just trust me?" How do you deal with that? It's like I do trust you, but I
Mhm.
don't trust that these boys are not going to gang up on you one time.
Right.
That they're
Right.
not going to, you know, yeah.
Yes, right.
I mean, but still, it's like I do trust you. It's
Mhm.
it's you're not. It's not. I'm not afraid of what you're going to do. It's what can happen to you. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you have the ones who say, "I don't want to dress like a nun," or "I don't want to wear a gunny sack because that seems to be the only thing." And I'm sorry, if you look at Marilyn Monroe wearing a potato sack, doesn't matter what you wear, they're still going to look good in it.
Right.
So, it's just the way it is.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's talking about that and understanding each other. And maybe that's part of it instead of just saying no, 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 is I would like you to understand where I'm coming from, and I want to understand where you're coming from. So we can come up with something that's agreeable to both of us.
Yeah, right. A compromise because you can compromise on some things and some things there just is no compromise, you know. It's
Right?
I said no, that's just the way it is. You don't have to understand that. And someday you will, and it's not today, but you need to hear what I'm saying, and it's no. End of story. That's it.
Yeah.
End of story. Because like when my dad would tell us no, we didn't keep asking. It wasn't, how come? Oh my God, hey, it was
Yeah.
no. That's it.
That's
Okay.
right.
But my mom now, it was a different story. She said no, and I kept saying it and, hounding her because I knew my mom was going to cave. My
Okay.
dad, absolutely not. My mom, oh, for sure. So teenagers know that
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
And if you want, having conversations with them, yes, what you just said, right? It's not because I necessarily don't trust you, but for one, I don't trust the hormones and I don't trust boys
There you
because,
go. Boys
hey,
are boys.
exactly. And it doesn't mean every boy is just going to, try to
Right.
have sex with you, but where are you going dressed like that? What's the image that you want them to have of you? And what's the image that you're portraying?
Right. And is
Hmm.
that all you want them to think about when they see
Yes.
you? Do you want them
Yes.
to know you have a mind, that you're creative, that you're
Yes.
brilliant? Or do you want them to just think you're a tool they can use whenever they feel like it?
Hmm. Right.
Because eventually it comes to a point that if you are, see if I can get this right, because I heard this when my kids were young and I thought this is brilliant. It's something that I can use to talk with them about, that if you have sex with multiple people, you are no longer a person, you are a tool. And if you're having sex all the time before you get married, you're not a woman, you're a tool. And when people see you, I know what it was. A lady was talking about the brain. And when you've had several partners, or when you've had a lot of sex, or you've had sex with a person before you married this person, the part in their brain that thinks of tools that they use for working on the car is the same part of their brain that they think of you with. And you don't want to be in the tool brain. You want to be in the loving and caring and taking care of you, compassion and care for you part of the brain. And it's like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
and the way you dress. where does that put you? Does that put you in the tool category? You know, because
Right.
what did guys say? They said this when I was young. You're asking for it. You dress like that, you're asking for it. I don't
Right.
know if they say that anymore or not, or they think that way. I don't know. They do.
hmm Yeah,
But
sometimes they still do,
yeah,
and they
but
do
it's like,
because of pornography,
oh yeah. Yeah,
It's
and it's so
so
rampant
easily
out there.
accessible. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, exactly. So when they see the girl like that, dressing like
And
that,
that's all they
and
think. Right.
right.
And
Right.
sexting on the phone now is so common.
Yes.
It's like,
hmm
oh yeah, give me your phone number, give me your phone number. And then it's like, well, why do you want my phone number?
Right.
You know? And it's like, no, I'm not going to give you my number.
hmm
Um, yeah, this
Yes.
part of being friends first, learning to be a friend, because once you're friends, your friends aren't going to try and take advantage of you. If they
hmm
do, they're not friend. That's
Right.
not what a friend does.
hmm
You know, no matter
Yeah.
who it is, you just, there's boundaries.
Right.
And, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
hmm Yes. And it's an ongoing conversation. And that's
yes,
just it, it's just conversation with your teenagers. It's not a one and done. It's continued ongoing so that mom, that dad may have an ongoing conversation for years with their daughter who wants to dress that way. But for
right.
the dressing, they have to get to the reason why she is dressing like that and
Hmm.
ask good questions because is what happens when they're asking the questions. Her brain, the boy, the girl, whoever it is, it can't help but answer that. And it may not be right there in the spot, but it's going to be later like, oh, well, why do I dress this way? And that might be months later. Oh, am I am I portraying that that I am way easy, that a guy can have me at any time? Is that because of the question that was asked? And it helps then the brain for that to register it eventually.
Right. And some parents don't know what good questions are. It's like,
hmm
I've been asking questions, I'm not getting any answers. So this is, it depends on every situation, but what are good questions? What are ways to ask questions without being accusing in tone or accusing in words? And it's like, what do you do? How do you ask?
hmm Well, if you're in the conversation, first of all, as the parent, you have to calm down because you set the tone for the conversation. If
Yes.
you come in high and you're like, man, your teen's coming in right there with you. So you have to maybe go take a walk, splash some water on your face, whatever you got to do, first of all. And again, sometimes you have to have that kind of conversation. Sometimes you have to be already mad and angry about something that has taken place. But again, not all of the time. So you
Right.
have to be calm. You have to check yourself. All right, how is my attitude going to be? Because I'm setting the tone here for this conversation. So if you want to have a conversation, we're talking about on how she dresses, and even for the guy, how he is going to look at her if she is dressed that way.
Right.
So, for him, if a girl is dressed that way, what are you going to do? If you go somewhere, you go to your friend's house and this girl walks in and she's half dressed, what are you going to do? So then you give them the scenario, the same for the girl. Okay, this is how you're dressing. What would you say to your younger sister when a guy wants to come up to you and you're somewhere and he's trying to have sex with you? What are you going to do? How are you going to respond to that? If you're dressed like that, what is it that you're looking for? How do you want them to treat you? So you start asking the questions differently. What's the outcome that you want when you are dressing like that?
Okay.
What makes you want to do that? Where did you see these clothes from? When you see it on someone else, what is your thought when you see
Right.
a girl dressed like that? What do you think of her?
And the statement that, well, everybody's doing it, and you come back with, well, if everybody's jumping off the cliff, would you?
Right.
Doesn't work. Didn't work for you. I
Yeah,
mean, come on, think
right.
back a little bit.
Well,
And that's one, now that I've said that, that's one thing I want to talk to you about is now we're adults. We've gone through all of this. We really don't think like teenagers anymore because we're not teenagers. We
mhm.
might remember some things, about teenagers and what it was like. but to really get back into there and into their minds. And they're living in a different world today than we lived in. So different. Everything is so convenient. We went from washing clothes by hands to putting them in the wash machine that we use with our phone, and so the whole world has changed from when we were teenagers. And that's not just for people my age, but people, maybe in their 40s and they've got a teenager or something. So we have to think that, oh, yeah, I forgot what it was really like. I mean, I remember those things, but to actually be a part of it and experience and the emotions and everything, it's like, oh, yeah, I don't want to go back there. So, so we need to talk to our teens to find out how they are thinking, because maybe the way we're thinking isn't even close to what's going on in their mind. They
Mhm.
may not even know what we're thinking. They may not even have it in their mind or anything. So I think it would be important to really talk to them and find out how they are thinking, what's going on with their brain. Um, and not that it's bad or good, it's just a different world for them.
Yes, right. And their brain
Yeah,
cannot comprehend some of the things that we are actually saying.
yeah,
They truly, it just cannot. So when we're thinking, oh my gosh, how are you so dumb? How can you do that? How can you be so stupid not to be thinking about what you're doing? They really like, wow, well, I just didn't. So when your teen's responding like that, that is true. They really do not know. So it's not because they really are just so dumb. It's because their brain capacity, the ability just is not there because it
yeah,
has
it's
not
still
developed.
developing. Yeah,
Right. And that's the last part that develops is the rational thinking. So it's like, oh,
that's so
great.
sad.
Exactly. And sometimes I
Develop
feel
it
like it hasn't
first.
developed for me. Yeah,
What I'm missing.
exactly. Yes. So even when you even made said, like, well, everyone's doing it, and that's a question you can come back with, well, like who?
Oh,
Who's doing it?
yeah,
So and then you wait for the response. Well, I don't know okay, so what are they doing then?
yeah.
So then
And
you,
why are they doing it?
exactly. Well, and you want to say, you want to really ask them the what. What is it that they're doing? So, in your opinion, why do you think they are doing it? So,
Yeah,
if you keep throwing the questions back that way instead of the you can't, you shouldn't, why are you doing that? Then you're not ever giving them a response, a chance to really respond with a thought
right.
response. And
Oh,
it might be silent. There might be silence. But in that silence, wow, they're like, wow, okay, I don't know who is doing it. They can't help but think of an answer eventually
right.
because it just is rolling that way. And you can tell by even their face, like, oh, I don't know. And if they say, I don't know, sometimes they really don't know. But sometimes it's like, well, I'm not going to tell you who it is. Well, then why are you
Yeah,
saying that everyone's doing it? Because if you're
yeah,
saying everyone's doing it, but you don't know who,
yeah,
sometimes you just have to be silent and just not even say that much because
yeah.
an answer is accumulating and juvenating through thought processing.
And the other thing too, if they're not willing to tell you who it is, it's like there's a problem there.
Yes.
Why are you not willing to say anything? Well, I don't want to rat out my friend. It's like, if they're not doing anything wrong, why would you be ratting them out?
Hmm.
You know,
Right. Hmm.
and get that thought going that way.
Right. And they
Yeah,
do need to feel they're in a safe place, though,
yes,
because if they
yeah,
haven't felt that before with you, as their mom, their dad, then that's something that mom and dad have to work on is building
yes,
their trust even with their teenager, because
yeah,
hey, sometimes parents aren't trustworthy. And your teen doesn't want everything that they do to be posted on Facebook.
that's
Most
right.
teenagers are really
Or
like,
told to
oh my
friends,
gosh, did you need to
youth
put
group.
that on there? Exactly, because there's a lot of parents that live on Facebook and are posting all this stuff. And your teenager is like, please stop putting that stuff about me.
Yeah,
I do not want everybody to know. If I wanted them to know, I would tell them. So please stop doing that. So sometimes parents have to pull back too and not be so even excitedly, aggressively putting stuff out there that your teenager
right.
really does not want you to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. The other day, I got to go stay with my granddaughter. She's 14. She
It's
would
nice.
not. She didn't want me to walk her to the bus stop. And it hurt me. Like, wait, just a few months ago, I could walk you to the bus stop. Your mom couldn't, but I could.
Mm.
And now you don't even want me there? And it was
Aw.
like, wow, how do I handle this? And
Mm.
that's another thing we, as parents, um, need to think about is now all of a sudden this stuff is going on and you have your own emotions to deal with. You've got your own um, thoughts going on, and how are you trying to process them, and don't take it out on your teens and don't process it in front of them. Um, there's because they may say things that you really didn't want to hear. And so what do? You know, you've got to find a way to deal with that because you don't want to put that onto them. That's
Yeah,
yours,
right.
not theirs. But,
Hmm.
and you know, they're growing up. And it was funny because my granddaughter, she's like, well, you can walk me this time. And it's like, no,
Right.
that's okay. I appreciate it. Just because, you know, you didn't want me to feel bad. And it's like, it's okay. You're growing up. I get it.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. It's hard for
Yeah.
for all of us.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
all of a sudden you had this sweet, wonderful person. And now the sweet, wonderful person, like, keep your distance
Right.
from me. You know,
Yeah.
I love
Yes.
you,
Like,
but stay over there.
yeah, I
It's
want to
like,
love you from
fine.
afar now.
Yeah. You know,
Yes.
you talking about sometimes there's things you have to do. And I'll tell on my daughter. I don't think she would mind. Sorry if you do. Um, she went to school, but my kids had my metabolism growing up. They were all very thin. And so if they miss meals or something, you notice it right away. And with her, I noticed, you know, within a week, she's losing weight. And
Mm,
it's like, what's going on? So I talked with her and I said, what's going on? And she goes, well, I'm not eating lunch because some of the girls I'm hanging out with are heavy and they're going on diets and I don't want to eat in front of them. And it makes it too hard for them. And I says, well, I appreciate your heart, but you cannot destroy your own health because of them. And and I could tell that it was like, right, I get what you're saying, but I'm not going to change what I'm doing. So
mhm.
I said, so I'll tell you what, I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you can feed yourself. But if I think you're not eating, if I see that you're losing weight some more, I'm going to come to the school every day and have lunch with you. And, and it's like, no, don't do that. You know? And I says, okay, I'll trust you to do it. And I did call the school and I did tell her I was going to do this. I just didn't,
Mm,
you know, not tell her. I did tell her, I says, I'm going to call the school and see if they will make sure that you are eating because I know your heart and you have to feed yourself. And she didn't. And I would call the school once in a while and yeah, she's eating. And I let them know why I called. I just didn't call the school and say, hey, is my daughter eating her food? You know,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, whatever. But she was too thin. She couldn't afford to lose any
Mm,
weight. And so it really was a health concern for her. But she did, and we didn't have a problem with it. And her and I still were friends. Um,
mhm.
but you know, sometimes you have to be the tough guy.
Right.
But
Right.
I
And you
didn't.
stepped in enough. You stepped in
Yeah,
soon enough and said,
yeah,
and she believed you, you
yeah,
know? That's the thing, right? She knew, wow, if mom's going to say that, she really is going to do that. That's why she was like, oh my gosh, okay. Because if you may not have had that conversation early enough, it could have definitely led into a
yeah.
serious eating disorder. But because you
Or
saw it and you spoke up
yeah,
and
she would
did
have ended
something,
up in the hospital.
yeah.
She couldn't have afforded to lose weight at that time.
Hmm.
It was yeah. So yeah, it was different. Yeah, one time you want to see what a tough mom. So my kids were really good in school. She was a straight A student. All of a sudden she's getting C's and D's. And it's like, that's not good. So they had an open school system at the time. It was where a lot of the shootings were going on. And I told her, I says, I'm going to school with you today. let her know the night before. I told her that morning. I says, I want to find out why you're not doing well in school. And we talked about it, the night before. It's like, why aren't you doing so well? What's going on? She told me some things, that was going on. That the hallways are crowded. You don't get time to get stuff done. And so I just showed up. I did not call the school because I didn't want them changing anything. And I showed up, and of course, at lunchtime, everybody pretty much knew while I was there, but she had most of her classes in the morning. And so I let the teachers know I'm not here to judge you or anything else. I want to see what's affecting my daughter, keeping her from being a straight A student. Not that we pushed her to it, it was
Hmm.
just her. That's just who she was. And so I went through, and it's like, I would not even be passing classes if I had gone through that environment.
Mm. Wow.
So I told her, I says, I get it. I understand what
Mhm.
you're saying.
Wow.
And, in the afternoon, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I heard you were at the school. And when I got to the school, I let them know has got nothing to do with the school. This has to do with the way my daughter is looking at things, and I need to know what's going on. And, and by lunchtime, the teachers were starting to open up to me to let me know what their frustrations were at the school,
Mm.
why they could only do things a certain way, why this had to be this way. Um, Although she did have one class, there was like maybe one or two posters on the walls, otherwise they were empty. And and at the end of the class, and it's quiet. I mean, it's just quiet in the classroom. And I've got ADHD. It's like I don't know if I can take this class. But I sat there and I was quiet. And at the end of the class, the teacher said, I am so sorry. This was such a disruptive class. I'm sorry you had to be here on a day. And I looked at her and I said, this was the quietest class I've had, even when I was going to school. I said, your class was fine. They were not disruptive. And I thought, wow, if she thought this was disruptive, it's like, and and for my daughter, it felt like she just felt like she had to be on edge all the time. Like
Mm.
if she did something wrong or spoke up or whatever, that it was going to be counterproductive. So it's like, yeah, I get it. I understand, and I understand why this class was a lot of fun, but I also understand why you're not learning because there's not enough time. You start the
Mm.
class, you start getting stuff, and then class is over. So it was, yeah, talk to your teens,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. Yeah,
and
definitely.
not accusing them, but just really find out what's going on.
Hmm. Right. Yes. And sometimes
Yeah,
you might have to keep probing and probing and probing gently, especially when they don't want to talk to you. Just say, well,
yeah,
you know what? I'm going to be here. So, but plug into them, put your phone down and plug in. Hmm.
yeah. We were talking
Yes.
about that earlier, that phones have changed the way we have conversations, how they're
Hmm.
short, they're not
Right. Hmm.
long anymore,
Yeah.
and
Or there's no
in-depth and,
conversation.
and comfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
That,
you were saying, people that are sending text to each other in the house. Now, I have to say that I did that with my teenage daughter because I was back in the office working and she was in the kitchen making food. And we were talking with each other. And I was on Facebook this before I was actually an entrepreneur. I was doing some genealogy and stuff, but I happened to be on Facebook with a friend. And my friend said, are you talking to your daughter on your phones in your house? And I go, yeah, I have this project I have to get finished. So instead of yelling at each other or getting up and down and going back and forth, getting behind, we're just doing it. But that was one of the rare things with us. We didn't sit there and do that a lot.
yeah.
And it's not like we're keeping secrets from each
Right.
other or anything. It was
Yeah.
just that was
Because
just
sometimes it can be fun,
yeah,
but when that's the only form of communication, then no, that
yeah,
should
that
actually be
needs
a
to
red
change.
flag to you, especially as the adult, that, oh,
Yes.
you shouldn't, that shouldn't, you being on social media with your teen and that being your only way of communicating, no, that's should definitely not be, especially if you live in the same house, you're together, you see, you're there every single day and you don't say any more than 5 words to each other, but it's all through the phone still. Yeah,
Yeah,
you definitely need to
it's a
put the
red
phone
flag.
down and connect with your teen in live action.
Right. Reminds me
Definitely.
of that song Cat's Cradle,
Mm,
where the dad is always gone, always
yeah.
in business, always doing this, and the kid grows up and the dad says, hey, I've seen you grown up, maybe at the age of 18. Hey, I've seen you grown up. Let's have a little time to talk. Oh, I'd love to, Dad, but I'm busy. I gotta get this done before I graduate, and then I'm going off, to college and all of this, and I've got to get work and and then you realize your kid grew up just like you because that's what you showed them life was
Yeah.
like. This is how you behave. This is
Right.
what you do when you're an adult. And
Mm-hmm.
so at some point you need to stop because, oh my goodness, you miss out on so much by not engaging with your children.
Yeah.
Um, and it's
Definitely.
not being their best friend and their buddy. It's just being a part of their lives and letting them be a part of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because
Yeah.
you're family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
That's
exactly.
the key word
You,
there.
right, exactly. Because you should want them to come back,
Yeah.
when they have their family and hey, you have grandchildren, you should want to come to visit you,
Oh,
but they
definitely.
have to have the relationship now to want to,
Yep.
where it's not just
Absolutely.
distant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
for
it's
sure.
we're a little further away now that we're in Texas than when we were in Idaho. So the trips are a little less than they used to be. And I miss them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're all growing up into teenagers and I know I'm missing out on some of the milestones in their life. They call me, let me know, send pictures and stuff back and forth, which is really great. I cherish each of that.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you earlier, the last time I went and saw the one family, um, the our grandson graduated high school and he's got his brothers there. And his one brother came up and just gave me this enormously squishy hug, just squeezed me. But I knew why, because I
Mhm.
had sent him a letter um, that talked about how the next time I see you, I'm going to give you this really big hug. And I'm going to hug you so tight, you're going to scream for me to let you go. And then you're going to ask me, why did I hug you so tight? And it's because every time you think of me, I want you to feel my hug around you. And I actually got that from somebody else. I didn't create
Mhm.
that on my own.
Mhm.
But as soon as he saw me, that's what he did because he wanted that hug and he
Aw.
wanted to leave me with his hug. And of course, so I do. I think about that. I did that with my granddaughter this week. I just kissed her really hard and told her why. And they laugh every time. I mean, it's a good
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
But
right.
they do grow up so fast. We had our stuff in storage for 7 years, and I'm unpacking. It's like everything was a time capsule because they were all real young. There was all these toys and all of this going
Aw.
on, and I missed 7 years of their life being
Mhm.
constantly with them because they were so close before. And it's like, well, you talk about trying to handle emotions and going through that,
Mhm.
and and finally I came to grips with it that I'm mourning something that I lost, and that was that closeness. That was watching them transition from these kids to becoming teenagers and now becoming adults. And so I make sure that I talk to them as often as I can, find out what's
Mhm.
going on with them,
Yeah.
and having that conversation like you're saying. Because sometimes kids don't feel comfortable talking to mom and dad, but they will talk to grandma or grandpa. Or maybe they don't want to talk to either, but grandma will let up on them or something. But we've had some difficult conversations, and it's like, you're growing up. You've got to be handle the consequences of the actions you take. We can't decide for you. You need to do it. But here are some guidelines to help you make choices that will give you good consequences
Yeah.
and,
Right.
and go that way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Definitely. Because
Yeah,
there's good or bad.
yeah,
And they have to, right, understand that it
yeah,
matters. The things that they do,
yes,
it really does matter. And it
yeah,
can carry into adulthood. So it definitely matters what they do.
definitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So So, tell me again, you parents can find your information on YouTube. You've got YouTube for parents, and you've got the
Mhm.
podcast coming up for the teenagers, and you
Mhm.
have a website. And what's the name of your website again?
ShawnaPartlow.com.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And
Hmm.
then you're on Facebook so that people can connect with you there. Do you have
Yes.
any workshops or anything coming up in the next month or so?
I I don't have any scheduled, is what I'm doing
Okay.
is then I'll be plugging into some of the churches in my local area
Oh, nice.
to be plugging into them and giving them information, and then that will be a paid workshop, and then I'll give them the teen class for free.
Oh, nice. That's really
Hmm.
great. That's
Yeah,
really
so
great.
so I'm excited because I love the in-person stuff. I'm
Yes.
definitely a in-person person. This works good,
Yeah,
But
but
I'm excited to
in-person's
get all
good.
that stuff
Yeah,
out. Hmm.
yeah, because this is really good, but you really make some deeper connections, or I don't know, something about being in person just really brings on even better conversations. These are great,
Yeah.
even better.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so
Technology
much
is good.
for being my guest. I love this. I love talking with you, and and to our audience, get a hold of Shauna if you've got teenagers or you're going to
Mm,
have teenagers. Be prepared ahead
right.
of time.
Right. Yeah,
Or if you've
exactly.
got teenagers that have just left home, you can still connect with them, see what she's got going on, look at her YouTube. And we'll talk with you later on Wisdom on the Front Porch.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It was great. It was
Thank
fun.
you. This was good.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today on Wisdom on the Front Porch with your host, Ellis Kirkpatrick. You can find us on our website, wisdomonthefrontporch.com, see previous episodes of the podcast, and view issues of the magazine. Did you know you can submit questions, leave reviews, or suggest topics? You can also tell us where your favorite front porch location is and what it means to you. We hope you gain value and insight from today's or previous talks. We appreciate your support for us so we can continue to provide value and expertise to you and others. Subscribe to Wisdom on the Front Porch magazine and join in next week when we bring you another great insight into the world of entrepreneur culture and lifestyle. Make today a great day. Always believe that something wonderful is going to happen.